And so for me, it is holding myself accountable, and accountability in the sense of, when do I need to stop? Because there's also like the stop line, right? When do I have to change gears? When do I have to try a different strategy? When do I have to more or less like take the step back? Because I'm a human being, and of course I'm getting one up on things when things don't go well, right? Or something doesn't work out that I tried, to more or less like take that step back and remind myself what this is about, and that it is not in that instance about me. It is about the other person or the organization that I'm supporting, right? And so it is, I say it's a two-way street, but it starts with myself.
Hi, I'm Roger Kastner, and welcome to the What Do You Know to Be True podcast. In these conversations, I talk with ordinary people about their extraordinary skill, their superhero power, and the meaningful impact it has on others. The goal is not to try to emulate or hack our way to a new talent. Instead, I'm interested in what inspired our guests to develop this talent, how they think about their superhero power, and the impact it has on others. The intention is to learn more about their experience with their superhero power, and in doing so, maybe we can learn something about the special talent in each of us. This conversation is with Juliane Mau, and it's about her superhero power of helping others discover, hone, and express their superhero power that's in the service of others. Juliane and I met several years ago on a project. She was in the role of the human resources business partner assigned to a leadership team, and I was brought in as an external consultant to work with her on an organizational development project. And the success of the project was going to be influenced by how well Juliane and I worked together. Well, fortunately, we found out very quickly that we were going to work together very well. And that's because we have a similar perspective on how to approach the work. We have similar styles of how we work, and we have similar purposes for why we do what we do. For those who are unfamiliar with the HR business partner role, I'm going to have Juliane describe it, as she could do a much better job than I. But what's important to know is that an HR business partner should work closely with a business leader and her leadership team on short, medium, and long-term initiatives to get the highest productivity and performance out of their people. To be really successful in that role, you not only need to be able to identify the talents of each leader, but you need to know how to help them show up and express their superhero powers in ways that positively impact the work, in ways that enable increased performance from their people, and in ways that create a more positive working environment. And this is what Juliane does really well. I'm excited to learn more about how she does that, how she thinks about the process, and what she's learned along the way in helping leaders have a more positive impact on others. If you're ready, let's dig in. Hi, Juliane. It's good to see you.
Hi, Roger. It's good to see you.
In the intro, I briefly explained how I think about the HRBP, or the Human Resources Business Partner role. A lot easier to say HRBP. Can you share with us how you think about that role and the purpose it serves to an organization?
Of course. So I've been like in the field of HR business partner for 15 years. So my perspective of the role changed as the role itself evolved over the years. So I consider the HR business partner to truly be a strategic partner to the business, and having like really the employee experience in mind, because one goes with the other. HR business partners are capable, because they have to know the business itself really deep, to be a strategic advisor, and also enable the coaching of the C-suite leaders that they oftentimes support. So that has an effect not only like on the business itself, right? Because they bring a different perspective to the table, but also on the employee experience. Because at the end of the day, you heard me say this multiple times, good leadership starts at the top. And trickles down into the organization. So it's a combination of being like really the strategic advisor, being the coach, but to some extent being the voice of the customer. The customer in that instance are the employees.
I love that. And what I've seen in you and other people who do that HRBP role really well is they understand the strategic nature of the role. And there are some who are in those roles who get really focused on um, doing the more tactical side,
Mm-hmm.
which is important. It serves a value, but they, in doing so, in getting into, probably as an attempt to build a lot of trust and to show value, they get focused on the competence side or the getting a lot of stuff done in service of the leader that they in doing so they focus on the tactical side at the expense of the strategic side and lose sight in the activity on what's really moving the needle for organizations and for leaders. And what I, in the experience where we've worked together and we've had a few projects and a lot of time together, what I really appreciate about you and your craft is that focus, that balance on the strategic, and the tactical is important, but you never lose sight of that strategic side.
I couldn't agree more, right? I mean, the tactics are like really part of the role itself, right? It goes along with it. But as an HR business partner, you have to understand the bigger picture. Sometimes you have to create the bigger picture because, like, some of the leaders that you support are not seeing it. And that's why it is like of such an importance that you truly understand the business, where the business wants to go, and really understand the people that you're dealing with. And I'm not only talking about the leaders that you support.
One of the things you taught me while we were working together was not only that's a challenge or a tension for the HRBP, that's a tension for the leaders you support, where they can sometimes focus on the tactics and lose sight of the strategic, which actually gets us to why we're talking today, that the recognition that your superhero power, if I can call it that, is helping others identify the superhero power in them. And to your point that I think you're going to make several times in today's conversation, this is me leading the witness. The point that you've shared with me before is just knowledge of that superhero power is not enough. It's the actual implementation and the actions that come from that. That's what matters. The awareness, cool. Definition, what it means to us, why, the why, all that stuff, great. That's required, but it doesn't mean it's not valuable until it actually shows up in the work and how we interact and ultimately delivers the results we're trying to deliver.
100%. You can talk a lot, but if you kind of don't bring it to the floor and show it in your actions, then the awareness is actually worth nothing. And I do agree with you. I consider, like, like one of my superhero powers being like really the perseverance, and being adaptable to people. And the reason for me saying that is, um, in my job, I regularly deal like with C-suite people, and they got to the top, right? And yes, every one of them has flaws, and so on and so on and so on. But finding different ways on how to actually make them aware that action is also required. So in the first place, bringing awareness to their own flaws or blind spots, but then trying to bring them into action of to what does this actually mean for you and how you are showing up as a leader, and what actions do you need to take to show up as a better leader, is like a complete different story, right? So first there's the awareness, and then there's really the how do I bring this into play. And the reason why I say perseverance is because the people that I oftentimes deal with, they got to the top. They kind of feel like settled, right? They oftentimes get also like a business coach or something, but the focus oftentimes gets like missing to really look into the internal and look what drivers they have, and how they show up, and they can make their decisions on how they want to do this. Do they want to be more like the dictatorship. Do they want to be this? Do they want to be that? So it's like truly focused like really on the business. But at some point, and I've seen it done really well. I've seen done it mediocre, and I've seen it done like really bad. But for me, it has always been like part of my strategic aim is to make things better and more efficient. And so, how do you go about this? You have to find different strategies because the first does not work. You know, you might be able to confront someone, but it might not be the right approach. So my first aim is always to understand the people that I'm dealing with and what is driving them, because it gives me the opportunity to see what strategy can I apply. And each of these strategies is always individual. There is not like a one shirt fits all approach. Because I'm dealing with individual people. And so building trust, yes, building this is all part of it. But I've been in situations where I needed to try like 7 or 8 different strategies to actually get where I wanted to go. And I help this person truly understand the core value of who they are and how they can show up in a better way. And and that is like my favorite thing about it, holding them accountable to it.
I love how there's like two sides to what you're talking about. There's, in order to help others identify and live into their superhero power, you need that sense of perseverance and adaptability, perseverance, and to continue to work with them to help them act that way. The adaptability piece where you might need to change how you're approaching it. And then they need to do the same thing in the deployment of their superhero powers. They likely need to be persistent
Yep.
in trying to do what they're trying to do, as well as adapt to situations. And then you just introduced a third thing, which is around accountability, of holding them accountable. But you've already talked about how perseverance and adaptability works on your side of the coin and their side. You introduced this idea of accountability, of holding them accountable to it. I'm interested in, we'll go through those things also, but I'm sort of excited around this idea of like, are you holding yourself accountable, or is someone else, or is the leader you're working with, do they hold you accountable for continuing to do what you're doing?
So first and foremost, I'm holding myself accountable because it is like, I don't expect people to understand right away the intention. I really don't, right? Later in the game, yes, I'm of course being held accountable by the leader that I'm supporting because there's then this trusted relationship, and of course there's also part of my accountability to not just let the ball then drop and say, "Oh, mission accomplished," right? But to more or less like support them on the journey further down the line. But first and foremost, I'm holding myself accountable because um, me realizing, and that also goes along with a part of your ego, right? Just because the first strategy and maybe what would work for myself might not work for the person that I'm dealing with. Or the things that I'm thinking, or the way that I have been brought up, everything is like different, right? And so there's a lot of individuality that comes into play. And so for me, it is holding myself accountable, and accountability in the sense of when do I need to stop? Because there's also like the stop line, right? When do I have to change gears? When do I have to try a different strategy? When do I have to more or less like take the step back because I'm a human being, and of course I'm getting one up on things when things don't go well, right? Or something doesn't work out that I tried, to more or less like take that step back and remind myself what this is about, and that it is not in that instance about me. It is about the other person or the organization that I'm supporting, right? And so it is, I say it's a two-way street, but it starts with myself. And then I would say later in the game, it is actually also the person that I'm supporting.
What inspired you, or who inspired you to want to help others deliver on their superhero power?
At some point in my life, I had a lot of people saying like, you can't do this, and you're not
Mm.
smart enough, and you don't have like a university degree, and don't have this, blah 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 blah. And that's where my perseverance kicked in, because that is like in my nature, and it's like, I think I do. I think I got what it takes. And so that was coming more from a place of unawareness because it's just buried in my nature. But the more I went down this path, the more I became aware of this superhero power that I got. And when I started to work in HR, I quickly realized um, that there is a lot of goodness to that. And my first driver, also like going back in the past, was like, I can make like the business better, I can help them win. And then quickly realizing to actually help the business win, I have to enable people. I have to enable leaders. I have to enable employees. It's all about enablement. And that's where it then came to me that I really want to help these people to become better, just better, because everybody will benefit from it themselves, the organization, the employees, everyone will benefit from it. And that's more or less like where it is coming from.
Having the ability to go against what people are telling you, and probably some people that maybe peers, maybe bosses, maybe the other leaders telling you that you can't do this, and being able to say, fuck that, I can do this. Where does that strength come from for you?
I think it's part of my nature. I have always been someone who's more or less like I prove it. I prove it to the people outside of my own self that I can do this. But the older I got, the more it was just like I don't have to prove it. It's more something that I want, and so it is coming like also like from my will, I would say. But again, I think a lot of the things that make us are part of our life, how we grew up, right? And I needed to take care of myself really early. And so I guess that's also a little bit like where this fighter in me comes from, right? Who's like, hey, I have been responsible for myself for quite some time. So who are you to tell me something like that? For me, that is like more or less like that instilled others, but it has always been like part of my nature. I'm like one of these people who's like, if I set my mind to something, then I go after it. Then I just go after it.
I love that the young Uliana had enough punk rock in her to not conform to what people were telling her. And I think this is one of the reasons why you and I just naturally get along, because I think I have some of that in me as well. It's like, oh, you don't think I can do that? Yeah, watch me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, I had like this one instance, like really early in my career, where one of my bosses said to me, Juliane, I don't know if you can think strategically. I really don't. And I was back then, I was just like, try me. Well, and here I am.
Yeah, that type of advice is really dangerous, because if you don't have someone that has a little bit of that pushback in their makeup, or a lot of that pushback in their background, like how many people are kind of bullied into roles, into jobs that, that is what they're good at, but they have zero juice, zero passion, zero energy around. And I think the Gallup work around, looking at engagement, and the numbers of like 80% of Americans are in roles where they don't have strength, which
Mm-hmm.
Gallup defines as the combination of capabilities and passion. If that's 80% of people, that tells me there's a lot of failed leadership out there giving bad advice.
It goes back to what we talked about earlier, the responsibility that leaders have and showing up. And it's not only the leaders. I think it's like more or less like everyone, right? Because you can have an impact with what you do or say. It can be like this stupid comment that I told you about, right? That might have led me for the next 3 to 4 years to prove, I have I have the capability to think strategically. I'm really good at that. But do you want to be led by the thoughts, impressions, or whatever else not from others? Should that be your driver? And I think that's like a question that we sometimes have to ask ourselves and take a step back and change a little bit our perspective instead of like having this emotional reaction to it and kind of say like, I'm going to prove it to you, right? No matter the cost. Um, Even though the people don't really play a role in your life, if that makes sense. I'm becoming a little bit philosophical here.
No, it totally aligned. At least I'm drawing connection between what you're talking about, and it's that idea what you talked about, perseverance, and the perseverance is being aligned to that vision that you have for yourself, what you know to be true about yourself, and what you want to be able to, where you're headed on that journey. Being able to go through the highs and the lows and stay on that journey. And so when you get data, advice, have experiences with others, it doesn't turn you on a different trajectory. It is a reminder to stop and remember where you want to go, how you want to get there, and who do you want to be, and choose your reaction, not
Yes.
just have that emotional response.
Yes, 100%. Right. I mean, I think a lot of people have been in these situations where somebody is either saying something to them like, oh, if you continue down this path, you could become a VP and SVP. And they more or less like consider this like as, oh, okay, I go for this without even questioning themselves if that is like what they truly want. And all superhero powers for me always go with discipline, right? You have to discipline yourself because you have like a superhero power. Okay, that's amazing. You have awareness of it. Okay, cool. You bring it into action. Also, thumbs up. But you have to discipline yourself in how you use it, when you use it, and what you use it for. And not just, you know, it's there and I'm doing something with it. It has to also have like a meaning, not for only for the other person, but also for yourself, if that makes sense.
It really
Okay.
does. This idea that you don't have to show your superhero power every day in every situation. And in fact, the pieces of advice that we see on Twitter, this idea that any strength overused becomes a weakness. I think this is getting right to what you're saying about if you have this superhero power and yet you use it all the time, it actually diminishes the value of that, of the impact of that superhero power.
Yes, and you can potentially also forget about like your blind spots. I don't consider it like like your strength. Your biggest strength is also your biggest weakness. I kind of disagree with that. For me, it's more you have a strength, right? But just like your blind spots means you don't see them. You're not really aware, right? But you know that they exist. Um, Both of these occasions need awareness, and you have to deal with both of them, right? It's easier with your strength or your power because you're aware and you know how to use it. But the other part of the equation is then truly your blind spot, and how are you aware of your blind spot, right? And how do you deal with it? I think a lot of people have the blind spot of emotional reaction, for example. Just in the examples that I mentioned earlier, you have someone whom you don't like, you need to work with this person, and then the person triggers something in you, and that is like one of your blind spots, right? And then you kind of go down this rabbit hole of emotional reaction. Oh my gosh, I hate this person, right? But you then need to be able, and that's like part of the equation of the perseverance, um, to take that step back and being aware that that is also like your blind spot. So you have like these two pieces that kind of go along with one another, but that both require a lot of discipline from yourself.
this is leading me to think about our potential next business venture together. And I don't have the title of this, but basically, as you were talking, this idea of strength plus blind spot equals weakness divided by awareness. Like, I don't know what quotient that is, but I think we could do a lot of YouTube videos on that alone, and maybe look kind of smart in doing so. Okay, you would look smart, and I'm just the guy who's building the slides, which might be a good way of describing the 3 years of us working together. But anyway,
that is so not true.
where I want to go with this is we've been talking about the value of perseverance, not only as you in your role of supporting others and their ability to bring their superhero power out, but I think we've been talking about adaptability as well in all this, but we haven't used that word. And where I'm thinking of adaptability is in those moments of awareness of, okay, I've been persevering in this place, and I've been choosing those reactions in those choices. Is that where adaptability comes out, or is there more to it?
I think they're like, so yes, that is also where adaptability comes out. But I think adaptability starts earlier, because no matter whom you're dealing with, you need to have the capability or the skill to be adaptable to situations, to be adaptable to people, and to be adaptable, like, speaking of work, to the organizations, right? You cannot just, and I see this in a lot of leaders, they more or less have set up their eyes on a thing, right? And they just go for it without completely ignoring their surroundings. And so you need to be adaptable to these like different situations that you're moving in, to adaptable to different people. When I speak of myself, I need to be adaptable in working with all sorts of people. Just because I think this is the right thing, I believe, like taking care of the organizational design and effectiveness is like my top priority, doesn't mean it is for everyone else, right? And so on the one hand side, you have the perseverance where it's just like, okay, how can I actually make people believe? But then the other piece is also to adapt to the situations that you are being handed, right? And to adapt to the circumstances, and to some extent also like adapt your own expectations, so that you are not like kind of all the time in the mode of I'm disappointed or whatever reactions you might have, but the adaptability to let yourself in, or agreeing with, or working with all sorts of different people and organizations, adapting your behavior, adapting like all of these things that consequently lead to the success, or to bring in the strategy that you have in mind. But adaptability is like one of these core pieces to that. I think that's like the one component, and I think the perseverance and adaptability kind of go hand in hand.
So when you're able to work with a leader and you are successful in helping them bring out their superhero power, where they show up with perseverance and adaptability, where they are choosing their responses rather than reacting, and they have discipline about where they apply it and where they don't. What's the impact on you when you've done this successfully?
I feel like more or less like I'm proud of it, right? And I'm happy for the person. I'm happy that they went down this path, but I'm also happy for myself, because my perseverance and trying like all these different avenues, and oftentimes it is not just one or two or three, led to something good. Right. Oftentimes, I don't say like always, right? That would be more or less like painting like really the wrong picture. That brings me joy when one gets to the point, and it can take a year, it can take 2 years. But when everything gets to the point where you can actually do the work, and I've seen it in the past, how much impact that can have, and that brings me true joy.
I love that word, joy. I think it's really powerful, because I think in the work that we do, ultimately, I think we're trying to create joy for other people. We're trying to create environments where leaders, where employees, and maybe even outside of the workplace, hopefully with, friends and family. We're trying to create, contribute in a way that leads to more joy. And I think that is ultimately what I might be stumbling into here is how we find purpose.
I do agree with you. I think for me, it is a bit like helping others more or less like living their best lives, to their capabilities, their skills, what they want in life, their drivers, all of this good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And consequently, equals joy. I do agree. But um, purpose, yes. But I think like everybody shares a little bit the same purpose in life. I think we all want to be happy. I think that's like one of the purposes that we have in life. We want to be happy. We want to live like a happy, fulfilled life. Um, but what does this look like for everyone individually?
And, I think we could talk about the role of perseverance, adaptability, discipline, and the ability to respond to changing um, situations, which probably adaptability again, those things that potentially get in the way of people finding their joy. And yeah, there is, I would think everyone wants to be happy, but we know plenty of people that do things that actively get in their way of being happy or finding joy. But there is something about a purpose, the formula to achieving a purpose does have to, it does seem to be true that it requires doing something in service of other people.
Yeah, I do believe that as well. To some extent, because at the end of the day, you need to have like your ducks in a row. You need to be living with yourself, and being in service to others is a component. I know people who are in service to others but are completely unhappy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'm not saying you have to accept yourself, you have to love yourself, you have to. I'm
It
not
helps.
saying it helps if you do, but it is
Yeah.
not a must for happiness. It sounds super weird when I
Mm-hmm.
say that, but I know that everyone has like their flaws, blind spot, or whatever that they don't like about themselves, right? And you cannot like yourself like 100%. Come on, loving yourself or loving like pieces of yourself, yes, is a foundation for a lot of things. I believe that it is a contribution to your own happiness if you are in service to others and see others succeed.
On that and on most things we can agree. So what do you know to be true about helping other people live out their superhero power?
What I know to be true about these superhero powers that we have been talking about is if you put them into play, if you are aware of those, um, most likely, I would say, if you bring all of this to the table, also like the discipline aspect, um, in 90% of the cases, it will bring you more joy and you will be happier. The other component that I know to be true, if you don't step into that mode, that you most likely will miss some good opportunities where you could be more content with yourself, or with others. You might have also like not more time, but less time with your friends and family. What I mean by that is, if you're getting worn up on a lot of things, you bring this into your private life, and that takes time away from your friends and family. And so that's like something that I also believe to be true if you don't step into these powers.
Is there anything that you've come to learn about helping people achieve their superhero power and the expression of their superhero power? Is there anything that you thought was true early on that you've come to learn is not true?
Early on in my career, I was so arrogant that I kind of felt like I can get everyone there. I can get them all there. And
Yeah.
realizing that, yes, I would say like 75% of the people are truly interested and understand at some point the value, from a variety of different angles. But there is a certain percentage where people are set where they are. They don't have an interest in that, and you won't be able to get them to change their mind or put that put on different glasses or take a different perspective, so they don't want this. And I was like early on of again, arrogance. I thought like I can make them all see that. But
Hmm.
I know that this is like true, that there needs to be a willingness and an openness to conversations like this.
Yeah, knowing when to stop.
Exactly. And that's also where what I meant about like the discipline
Yeah.
aspect. You need to, and that's something that I needed to learn. And I think I learned it pretty well, to more or less like understand when to stop, right? And to put my energy like elsewhere. And I mean, you and I, we work together. We've worked with several different leaders. And yes, there have been like one or two occasions where I realized at some point, okay, no, that is not going to work. No matter which strategy you're trying, it's not going to work. There is no interest in taking a look at the organization and the effectiveness, the operating model, whatever you can think of. There is just no interest in taking a closer look at the leadership. There is nothing, right? And no matter what I try, no matter what language I speak, no matter whatever, there is no willingness in my counterpart. So they are driven by something else, and they stick to their plan, and are not derailing from it. And that's like really where the discipline kicks in, knowing when to stop.
That ability to recognize when it's time to stop, having that discipline. That's hard. And it hurts,
Yeah.
at least for me.
Yeah, I think for me it has shifted. In the past, yes, it hurt me because I've put so much blood, sweat, and tears into the process itself, and I was able to kind of see like the vision and the goodness that would come out of it. And then of course, when there is like some sort of a rejection or a denial, right? Then it is like, yeah,
And
right?
I mean, the words you're using, rejection, denial, it feels personal. But we
Yeah,
know,
but
we know logically, we
it
know
is there.
logically it's them
Yeah. For me, it is
and
more
all.
like a disappointment. It's not, it
Mhm.
doesn't hurt me. It's more like a disappointment, in the sense of, um, I, I have been able to see the goodness, and I know that the status quo is not going to change, even though it is like just two, three steps away. And that's like where the
Mhm.
disappointment then kicks in, because there is like so much value in this, for everyone who is part of this game. And then to more or less like realizing there's just like this one single person who could have such an amazing impact, and this person is not taking like the two or three steps.
Yeah, they're
That's
not
like more
ready.
just they're not ready. This is like disappointment. But then it goes back like to the discipline and the perseverance to more or less like take a step back and kind of see, okay, what is then like a reasonable outcome? What is like,
Mhm.
okay, expectations, lower your expectations, what is like a good outcome that at the end of the day will bring me the joy as well. Bring them joy, but also consequently bring me the joy.
And in doing so, you're actually producing, helping them produce something that's better than what was there before. But
Correct.
we see the potential, and we know we're not
Yeah, I
going to
think
get
it's like
there
oftentimes,
yet.
yeah, it is hard to kind of see, when you identify the potential not only of the individual but also, about all the rest of the work, right? Everything that would be possible if you kind of see that potential with open eyes, and they can't see it. I think they decide that that is not for them, consciously or unconsciously. Let's put that aside. But to see the potential of something. And I think that's also part of the jobs that we do. We are good at understanding people. We are good at reading people. We are good of understanding the bigger picture of organizations, businesses, success, and so on. And to see the potential not only for the employees or the individual, but for the business itself. And then ah, you know, needing to kind of let this slide a little bit and lower your expectations, that is a tough thing to do. But that is, again, where the discipline comes in as well, to take that step back. and continue with the perseverance, just at a different level.
I
And
feel like this
adapting your expectations.
um, I think you have experiences that I can learn from. You talked about the discipline of knowing when to end it. And unfortunately, this episode does need to come to an end. How do you like that for a segue? I
No.
know. I'm sorry. But before we end, we have to do the lightning round. Let's go. So fill in the blank. Enabling other people's superhero powers is
Amazing.
so who in your life enables your superhero power?
Myself, my husband, my friends, and the people that I work with.
Love that. Is there a practice or routine that helps you grow, nurture, or renew your superhero power?
I try to more or less like practice the awareness and the discipline around awareness, specifically of my blind spots, because my superhero powers are there. I'm aware of those. But, my blind spots, I'm training my awareness around those. And that, leads me to take a step back when I'm about to have like conversations that might be tough, or when I had like tough conversations, to more or less like not reflect on what happened, but to understand, more or less like that is like an emotion, a reaction, or whatever else not. And to then determine the way forward and what I'm doing with it.
That simple stopping when you're feeling an emotion, and this is coming true for me in this conversation, when you feel that emotional reaction, to realize, oh, that's a signal to me that this is hitting me in a way that I need to manage me. It's not an emotion in reaction to the other person, but it's really
Yes.
telling me I need to do something about me.
Yeah, I more or less I kind of say emotions are amazing and you shouldn't suppress them. You shouldn't push them to the side because they are advisors. They want to tell you something. But that doesn't mean that you have to actually do what they tell you or ask you to do, right? Um, Otherwise, I think we would live in chaos. But taking the step back and just having the awareness of what triggers right now, is like something that is like worth a gold mine. And not only like being aware of it, but then also accepting that emotions are also a good counsel or advisory board for yourself to understand what's going on, and then enabling you on the conscious level to make decisions is like the best.
I loved all of that. The piece that's really standing out for me is those emotions are advisors that you don't have to take their advice on.
Correct.
Is there a book or movie that you recently watched or read that you would recommend that has this idea of enabling other people's superhero powers as a theme?
I think the book that I've read is actually like a book that you recommended to me, The Power of Ted. It is not actually like something that is like on the first, if you read it and at first sight, it is not about like enabling others and their superhero powers, but it goes more back. It all starts with yourself, right? Having understanding of yourself, doing things with intention, doing things in a conscious way, and understanding your own purpose, and that then consequently enables others to step into their superhero powers.
I love that visual of, when someone steps on that TED stage and they get in that red circle and with the spotlight and they just launch. I think is a great visualization for what it's like to actually step into your superhero power. What is one thing that gets in your way of enabling other people's superhero powers?
One of the things that is getting in my way is like one of my blind spots. Having like a reaction, an emotional reaction. That is like what I'm constantly training, like constantly, to be aware of this blind spot that I might be just like everyone else being triggered by something or by something somebody says or does, but really stepping into this blind spot space because I'm aware that it can get into the way of the things that I want to accomplish.
If a listener wanted to ask you a question or follow up with you, where do you want to point them to?
I think the easiest way to get in touch with me is just truly going to LinkedIn. right? And shoot me a message over there. And I'm more than happy to help out or respond or whatever.
Well, Juliana, I am so grateful and appreciative for you sharing your wisdom today. This idea about enabling other people's superhero powers through perseverance, adaptability, choosing your response in the moment, and then having the discipline to know when, where, how, and when to stop trying to enable other people's superhero powers in a certain way. Those 4 tenets seem so valuable, and I'm really grateful that you shared those today. So thank you very much. And as always, I love this conversation. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you so much for having me, Roger. I really, really, truly enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
This was another episode where it is hard to end because I enjoy these conversations so much, and I feel like I'm getting such a deeper understanding of the concepts that our guests are sharing. And this conversation with Juliana was no different. I'm taking to heart her main message of the knowledge of one superhero power is not enough. And what matters is the act of putting one superhero power into play. And Juliana shared with us that it's the principles of perseverance, adaptability, discipline, and accountability that amplify the effectiveness of our talents in having an impact on others. There's a quote that circles around in sports, but I'm reminded of it here in our conversation. And that quote is, "Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard." Now, it's Kevin Durant, the NBA basketball star, who famously said the quote, but it's attributed to Tim Noakey, the varsity high school basketball coach. And who knows, I'm sure you could find it attributed to Einstein and Ben Franklin and Socrates, depending on where you're searching on the internet. And while you might have seen examples where hard work has out-hustled talent, what Juliana is advocating for here is talent and hard work. That's the recipe for achieving the most meaningful purpose of having a positive impact on others. This conversation leads me to reflect on a few things that I encourage you to think about as well. In what conditions are we aware of our talents, but something is holding us back from expressing those talents? And why are we holding back? Additionally, in what conditions do we need to have the discipline to pause, to not throw on our capes and rush in to do our superhero power thing? If you like this episode, please do me a favor and tell one other person about it. Thank you in advance for doing that. What Do You Know to Be True is a 3 Blue Pens production. I'm your host, Roger Kastner. We are recording on the ancestral lands of the Duwamish and Suquamish people. To discover the ancestral lands of the indigenous people whose lands you are on, go to native-lands.ca. Okay, be well, my friends.
Go.
Hi, Juliana. Okay, we got something for the blooper reel. I had a yoga teacher once say, "You are stardust and all your adversaries are 80% water," which I thought was kind of aggressive for a yoga class, but still.
I love that.
How are you feeling?
I'm good. It feels like a normal conversation between you and
Does
I.
this cool? Yep. Yeah, this is one of those moments where I don't know where I want to go because I want to go everywhere with what you just said.
Shoot, I really cannot think of a good answer right now.
That's something I'm wondering, maybe that's a future episode on your superhero power of lowering expectations.